Hello Galactic family. If you are reading this article, you are probably at least partially if not fully awakened to what is happening around the world. You probably understand we're living in historic times and it's becoming very useful, not to mention very cool, to be informed beyond the controlled mass deceptive sorcery which we call mainstream media, whose believability according to Gallup is at an all-time low. With so many eye-opening revelations and events going on today, critical thinking truth seekers can finally take their foot off the pedal a bit and say to their friends, family or co-workers who were or still are stuck on mainstream media sorcery news, I told you so. Face it, it's not just Christians and Bernie Sanders supporters who have had a rude awakening to the reality of the New World Order and widespread corruption. Many people can't help but to see that something is very wrong. It involves corruption and propaganda, and there is now no reason to trust government. Relatively speaking, things are moving so fast that I want to summarize some main segments of global events for people who may not have put it all together. Think of this as my global awakening or paradigm shift summary for dummies. The basics. As I've said many times, all of these recent developments and revelations are unfolding because we are living in an information age where it is no longer very easy for the ruling elite to keep activities and intentions hidden from the general public. Have you noticed how things that were once hidden are now all being brought to the light? No, it's not your imagination, it's really happening. The light of human consciousness is the source of light we are talking about. When you truly step back and think of it, it makes perfect sense that humanity would come to this point. Here's a sequence of events over the past 100 years or so to help put everything in perspective. 1. Following the turn of the new 20th century and the advent of the industrial age, a prevailing criminal money-making consciousness picks up steam. Control freaks with money and riches begin to realize that patenting technology and anything else, for example chemicals you can get your hands on, means potentially being eternally rich and powerful. As a result of this growing money and power consciousness, humanity is about to suffer through a long period of darkness and hidden knowledge which we are still in today. This would turn out to be a long dark 100+ year period where human consciousness gets progressively buried in the occult darkness of ignorance engineered by the ruling elite, who from the start felt it was their duty to manipulate the will of the masses. Think Edward Bernays, Aldous Huxley etc. with propaganda, mass mind control and engineered consent. Too early on, the ruling elite officially take over the money supply, private Federal Reserve banking scam and the military, a deadly combination that ensures that wars could now be waged strictly for profit. It's no coincidence that WWI took place right after the creation of the Federal Reserve debt-based criminal banking scheme, and it's no secret that many bankers exponentially increased their riches during WWI. 3. These elite then get their hands on the necessary 20th century technology and resources required to control the human race, TV, radio, communication etc., and make as much money as possible at the same time, thereby creating a path by which to fund the enslavement of the masses. 4. The ruling elite also create secret societies where their plans could thrive in an organized manner outside of the prying eyes and ears of the general public. 5. The ruling elite also establish schooling systems to indoctrinate future elitists on how to dominate the species for their personal gain. 6. Similarly, one by one they take over all the major ministries and public sectors, mass media, medical industry, legal system, energy, transportation, agriculture, communications, entertainment etc. These ruling elite perpetrators of crimes against humanity, however, underestimated the expansion of human consciousness and information awareness that we see today in 2016. They put all their hopes in mass media deception and propaganda to keep the species deceived and controlled. That plan is now crumbling with every day that goes by as the world sees the propaganda for what it truly is. We humanity are now blessed with free knowledge and information made available by the same technology they, the ruling elite, were hoping to use against us. They of course have indeed accomplished a lot: mass mind control, depopulation, endless sickness and disease, endless wars, financial enslavement of the masses, unchecked corruption, etc. But on the flip side of things, the ruling elite are continuing to suffer critical losses which threaten their existence forever. They know it, and they can only hope their last bit of corporate media sorcery and deceit will work on enough people to help them maintain their power. For this reason we should look no further than elitists like Google Eric Schmidt, Facebook Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter Dorsey, Glass, Stone and Williams, and SpaceX Elon Musk, among others, who are quietly and actively working behind the scenes to control the very information that got the elite in the predicament they're in now. There is an active effort to not only rewrite history but to target and eventually criminalize every person for what they believe and what they say. Yes, free speech. The reason being is that the New World Order envisioned by the ruling elite is not supposed to have any opposition. The government and many of these technology companies are thus working hard to control what you see on the internet, a forum which now practically ensures the ruling elite plans will absolutely fail. This is, my friends, where we are in terms of human history and the notions of information sharing and global political awakening. Many of us who are awakened to political events around the world wonder, who is still truly believing mainstream media? Even though we know full well that a lot of people still do, it becomes a little bit more difficult with every day that passes imagining that anyone would still truly trust and believe mainstream media. Thankfully, if mainstream media's perceived credibility is a representation of the degree to which people still believe in it, then we must face the reality now that mass awakening is here. It's like a decameter that is about to burst. We keep waiting and hearing the small cracking sounds, knowing full well the burst could come any second. Once you understand this information war stage we're in, then you can see why the primary function of the corporate media is to maintain the illusion of the current establishment and paradigm that has enslaved humanity for well over 100 years now. As the Deutsche banking system faces what many consider an inevitable collapse, we're reminded that the ruling elite's power, like the value of money, is strictly a perception. Think about this. They know that once a large enough percentage of humanity can consciously distinguish and outline these specific criminals for what they have done to humanity, justice and accountability will prevail as the new dominant form of consciousness and thus the new paradigm which is already in effect. Lending to the recent wave of culminating energy surrounding the notion of transparency and exposure of corruption are many revelations which any idiot can easily confirm for themselves. Now that we've reviewed the direction humanity is headed in terms of our past, the road to mass awakening and the transformation to a new paradigm, let's review what I call an idiot-proof, easily verifiable blueprint of what the ruling elite are doing today, who they are and what their goals are, for dummies. New World Order for Dummies. Before we begin our idiot-proof breakdown of easily available information, let's get the definition of New World Order out of the way for anyone new to this information. The term New World Order refers to the ruling elite's plan for a one-world government. See Bush HW speech, where they can do whatever the hell they want and you, the non-ruling elite, are a meaningless slave whose chip they can turn off whenever they feel necessary. Chip, you say? The late Aaron Russo will explain that here. Are you part of the US military, and do you think you are special because you are brave and willing to fight the bad guys? Actually, for you it's even worse, because Henry Kissinger flat out refers to you as a dumb stupid animals. Can any be more insulted than this? In this new world global order there are no nation states, and the rights of the individual exists no longer. Worship of the planet and holding the individual responsible for damage to the planet while stripping away essentially all human rights is the key to taxing and controlling the individual, globally, with the UN used as the enforcement arm. This new world order is being spearheaded mostly by the United States and its allies, which many of us refer to as the West or Western cabal, because ultimately this is about money, and the central bankers and the financial elite are the ones ultimately and actually behind this global scheme. Because this ultimately involves money, riches and greed, it is not technically just criminal banking elites in the United States involved, thus the reason I'm using the quotes. Not at all. It's individuals of different nations and interests. For this reason disinformation agents always look to make it about a certain nation state, religion, political group, right versus left, even race or gender. That's because as long as we are blaming a race, for example whites, a nation for example US, Israel, a religion Muslims, or other group for example Zionism, they, the ruling elite who overlap all of these groups, know that we'll never zoom in on exactly the people behind this agenda against humanity. Incidentally, if you want to blame any one entity in terms of nation states, here's my answer to that. Ask yourself, how many US military bases are there around the world? The answer is well over 1,000, despite the often claimed 737 to 800 plus bases by many websites, including my own previous articles, and that does not include so-called lily pads or countless not-so-secret special forces secret command bases worldwide. Let that sink in. Cold War II has begun. The US and NATO are deliberately provoking Russia, hoping for WW3. Then look around the globe and try to find any country with even 0.01% as many bases. Case closed. Think about that next time you see the US military being worshipped at NCAA college sports arenas and pro sports games. The politicians we see on TV, including their big six corporate mainstream media, is just the persuasive mouthpiece of this global cabal. This is why almost every piece of news put out by the Western mainstream media, think CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, BBC, Fox, Reuters, NPR, AP, NIT, etc., always push the exact same talking points, which almost 10 times out of 10 perfectly contradict the reality of what is happening when you look at all sources of news around the world. That's because they are just one collective mouthpiece for the ruling elite. Think Bush, Clinton, Obama, Soros, Kerry, McCain, Kissinger, Cheney, alphabet agencies, etc. The working structure of the hope for global order, see images below, is left to the United Nations, which is why they refuse to look at the science that entirely debunks the notion of global warming. The carbon tax will be a major funding source for the global government. This is also why the UN's Agenda 2030 incorporates talk that makes the UN the final godlike authority, makes all of humanity accountable to the UN and its global standards, while at the same time the UN pushes for a global medical command center, mandatory dangerous and unnecessary vaccines, global policing, and everything perfectly consistent with the ruling elite's New World Order plans. The goals of the elite and the United Nations is to undermine the ultimate sovereignty of nation-states. The enforcement arm of this agenda is the US military, NATO, the CIA, and whatever proxy armies they can recruit, train and arm to help get this done. Think ISIS, rebels, terrorists, etc. ISIS terrorism for dummies. And speaking of ISIS, it is now common knowledge to anyone not completely brainwashed under the ruling elite's CIA-controlled corporate mainstream media that ISIS is without question the proxy army of the United States and its NATO allies for the purposes of destroying, destabilizing or maintaining the destabilization of nation-states, particularly in the Middle East, Syria, Libya, Iraq, etc. As alternative media has revealed many times over the course of the past few years since the declaration of the Caliphate, this U.S. allies created, funded and armed proxy army has been used as a tool to create fake terrorism here in the U.S. and throughout Europe. We now know that anyone who attacks ISIS thinks Russia coincidentally is declared the enemy by the U.S. war machine. We also know that the U.S. terrorist war machine is clearly outlined in the neocon global war plans, war crimes manual known as PNAC's Rebuilding America's Defenses needed to make every nation state that they desired to overthrow simply look like the bad guys. Thanks to General Wesley Clark's infamous "every problem has to look like a nail" revelation following 9/11, this information is old news and easily verifiable by anyone interested in the truth. Understanding this long-term plan, the creation of US's ISIS allows any person to then understand everything else happening today, including the now irreversible road to World War III we are on. Let's take a look at other easily verifiable realities of today. U.S. mass propaganda techniques for dummies. Still don't clearly see how the elite have done their damage? Realize how propaganda works. The entire U.S. global empire has been built with propaganda tactics. This single bit of knowledge of how propaganda works is the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding the overall picture and paradigm shift we are in today. Here is how it works. They control the large ministries and sectors of society, as we mentioned earlier: the press and media, energy, production, unions, police, military, politics, etc. B. Educate the influential leaders of these ministries and make sure they influence their followers. C. Specifically control and monopolize the mass media and entertainment for mass mind control and engineered consent. This is done by propagandizing the public with commercials, slogans, jingles, images, persuasive videos, movies, billboards, etc. In doing this, you make the public think that the opinion they have and the decisions they are making are their own decisions, when in fact it is engineered by the invisible elite whose role as mass manipulators is inherited, so they think. D. Use this propaganda tactic on other nation-states to overthrow elected governments, create civil unrest and insert your puppet leaders, all under the guise of spreading democracy. E. Kill and wage outright war against any nation-state that does not succumb to your propaganda. Syria, Libya, etc. F. Create, fund and arm proxy armies and terror groups, as already mentioned earlier: ISIS, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, U.S. Special Forces, Moderate Rebels, Craft International, Blackwater/XE/Academy, etc. as tools to accomplish this constant strategy of perceived unrest, staged terrorism and tension. Gladio B. Strategy of tension. G. Keep lying to the public, maintain military-level secrecy with everything you do, label everything national security and grind out the lies and propaganda to the bitter end. Overall summary: this campaign of outright corruption and secrecy is finally being dismantled in the eyes of the general public as leaks continue coming out revealing things we already knew, like that the political parties are corrupt, or that civil unrest is being financially manufactured, or that the U.S. pays for and manufactures fake propaganda to achieve a desired political result in foreign countries. We know that many events of the past few years have been staged, like the Sandy Hook FEMA capstone event of December 14, 2012, complete with FEMA manual and all, even as people all over the world fall for the "but little children died" emotional psyop in the face of zero evidence of the event's organic reality, and even as truth seekers are stalked and harassed in a post-Sandy Hook era of underground criminality targeted at truth seekers. We also know that there is an active plan to federalize and arm the police with military gear, that DHS and even the IRS is stockpiling military-grade weapons to defend themselves against the general public. Is this because they know Judgment Day is coming? We also know that last year, 2015, a software known as JADE, Joint Assistant for Development and Execution, and JADE 2 was deployed in what appeared to be simulated combat scenarios, JADE at the helm. This appears to have been a real-time deployment of the AI-based and highly sophisticated and very complex software whose depth and capabilities as it relates to total domination of the human race most humans cannot begin to fathom. And that brings us somewhat to where we are today, on the eve of potentially a financial collapse, another staged and stolen election, and even a nuclear and catastrophic World War III scenario with Russia, even as the ruling elite are being completely exposed for who they are and what they've done, begging the critical thinker to wonder if perhaps this is the very reason we are in this scenario to begin with. The moment of truth is now. Either they will succeed in dominating the entire human race, or humanity will overcome this disease and infection of the human race known as the parasitic ruling elite. Too bad this game of life is not fast-moving enough. Although things are literally moving faster than ever, it is in the nature of time and consciousness for things to move at a generally slow, steady pace. Two qualities to remember about this game of life is, it is multidimensional and it moves at the slow, gradual pace of perceived time. It's also important to realize that many things are always happening at the same time, which lends to notion of confusion regarding the big picture and gives the ruling elite many other distracting things to focus the people's minds on, including the elite weapon of partial truth or controlled opposition. That's my current global human paradigm shift for dummies update for today. Taste it, smell it, feel like. Look at it and realize it's staring you in the face, because nothing is hidden. We are living in historic times and everyone should be asking themselves this one question every single day. Ask yourself, how am I being fooled today? As everyone awaits the often talked about October surprise, realize that we are all being fooled and played in one way or another. Such is the nature of the information age, a time when the ruling elite are desperately relying on deception, censorship and propaganda to get their new world order done. As I've said many times, today it is healthier than ever to not believe anything you see on mainstream media news. That's right, 0%. More than ever, the new application of Occam's razor dictates that everything mainstream media puts out is a lie even before looking up the facts. If you understand this argument and agree, please share this information with others who don't.